This video is sponsored by DevMountain. If you're interested in learning web development, iOS, or UX design, DevMountain is a 12-week design and development bootcamp intended to get you a full-time position in the industry. To learn more, visit devmountain.com or click the link in the description below. Hey, what's going on, guys? Welcome to Exploring Docker Part 2. In the first video, we just looked at Docker as a whole, what it is, what containers are, what images are. We looked at a bunch of different commands to run containers in both interactive and detached mode. We looked at Docker Hub and pulling image. We looked at a very simple Dockerfile using Nginx. So just kind of an introduction. Now I want to do something that's a little more practical. I want to take an existing Node.js application that uses MongoDB. It's a very simple application, and I want to Dockerize it by creating a Dockerfile, and also I want to create a Docker compose file because I want MongoDB to run in a separate container, and I want them to be able to basically talk to each other, and we want to be able to easily containerize this application and put it anywhere, and we're actually going to put it on a Digitalocean droplet. All right, so let me close that up. This is the app on GitHub. Now, by the time you guys see this, you're going to see the Docker file and the Docker compose and all that stuff. If you want to follow along with me, you can clone this repository and just delete anything that says Docker, and then you'll basically be where I am now. Okay, and I do have my dependencies installed here, so I already ran npm install. Now, first thing we're going to do is just take a look at the application. So if we look at our package.json, let's see our dependencies. So body parser, so we can parse whatever comes in from our form. It's a very simple just form where we can add an item with a name, and then it just lists the items on the page. Very simple. We're using EJS, embedded JavaScript, as our template engine, Express as our framework for our routes, and then Mongoose to talk to MongoDB. And if we look at our index.js, we're just bringing in our dependencies, setting the view engine. Here we're connecting to MongoDB. Now notice I'm not using localhost here. Okay, if you were doing this on a local environment, you would most likely use localhost. Mongo is going to be the name of our service it's going to be our Mongo container. Okay, so that's why this is not localhost. And once we connect, we're just bringing in the model, which is very simple. Take a look real quick. It's just a name and date. The date is put automatically, so all we have to worry about is the name. And we have two routes. One is the home page, which just finds the items in the database, renders the index template or the index view with the items. And then the post is when we submit the form. It'll create a new item. It'll get the name from the form and then save to MongoDB and then redirect. And then notice the port is 3000. That's very important because in our Dockerfile, we need to know which port that we're going to be exposing. Okay, we're also going to need it for the Docker compose file. So very simple application. If we look at our view, this is all it is a simple form where we can add an item, and then it just loops through the items and shows each one. Okay, very, very simple. And I wanted the app to be really simple because it's not about the application, it's about Docker. So let's go ahead and create a Docker file. Okay, capital D, Dockerfile, no dot at the beginning or anything like that. And we're going to be using the Node.js image. Okay, so let's say from Node. Now we could do latest. Okay, we could do that, but if Node gets updated, or if this image gets updated, it could mess our application up if there's something in the newer version that isn't compatible. So it's usually a good idea to use a solid version. So right now version 10 is out, so I can just simply say node 10 and it'll give us the latest version of 10. All right, so I'm going to do that, and then we want to create a working directory. Okay, so basically where our app will live in the container, and I'm going to use user/source/app. And then we want to move the package.json file and the package lock file while we're at it into our container because we need to install any dependencies. If you guys don't know how Node.js works, it looks at the dependencies in this file and then you need to run npm install to actually install them, and then it creates this node modules folder. So we need to move the package.json file. So let's say copy, and I'm going to say package.json, and we want to copy it to the working directory. So we can just go like that. Now if I want to move the lock file as well, you can see package-lock.json. I can simply put an asterisk here, and that will account for both of these because that's a wildcard. All right, and then once we do that, we need to run npm install, so we can simply use the run command and then say npm install. That will install our dependencies. Next, we want to copy everything else over, so I'm going to just do copy dot to dot. So copy whatever is here into our container, and then we want to expose port 3000 because that's the port that it runs on. And then finally, we need our command, which is in an array form. So we want to do npm and start, because if we look at package.json, I have an npm script under start that just runs the app. It calls node and then the name of the main file, which is index.js. So npm start will run our app, and that's what this command is going to do right here. So this is a very common and very simple Docker file for a Node.js app. So I'm going to save this. Now we could go ahead and build this, but it's not going to work because it's going to look for MongoDB and it's not going to be able to find it. So we could do things separately, like we could manually create a Mongo container, but we don't want to do that because we want this to easily port to another system, and Docker Compose allows us to do that. Now in the gist that I have in the description, which is this GitHub gist page here with all these commands, if you go down to the bottom, there's an example of a very simple Docker Compose file. And this is from Brett Fisher's course, and this is actually for a Jekyll site. So he has an image on Docker Hub called Brett Fisher /Jekyll serve, and this is an example of him running the container. He did Docker run, but we were doing Docker container run. He opens the ports, and he creates a volume for the current directory to map to the site folder in the container. Now you can do this same thing within a composer file, and that's what he's doing here. I don't know why I put the version up here. Version should be down in the file here. But you can see that we have services, and he only has one service, which is Jekyll, and he defines the image. So image, same thing he's doing here, the volumes. So the current directory, this dot, is going to be mapped to /site, which he's doing right here as well. And then ports, he's mapping 80 on his local machine to 4000 in the container, which is the port that Jekyll's running on, which he's doing here. So this command can be done with just putting this stuff in this file and simply running Docker Compose up. So that's the idea of what we want to do, except ours will be a little more in depth because we're also using MongoDB, so we want a Mongo service as well. So let's go ahead and close up our Docker file, and let's create... Did I put that in the models folder? I did. Don't do that, guys. Let's move that out to the root. That shouldn't be in models. So now we're going to create a file called docker -compose, and it's a YAML file, so it's going to be .yml. And we want to do the, let's see, first thing we want to do is the version. So you could use version 2. I'm actually going to use version 3, which should be the latest. And then let's say services. Okay, indentation is very important here. So under services, you want to make sure that you're tabbed over. And then we're going to put app as the name of this service. This doesn't actually matter. You'll see web a lot of times, or you'll see like node in this case or something like that. But we're just going to use app. And then we're going to specify a container name, which I'm going to call docker-node-mongo. Then we want to define restart as always. So basically if it fails, then we want it to just restart. That's all this is doing. Now as far as the image, we want to build from our Docker file. So we want to just put in build and then dot, and that's going to simply look in the current directory for a Docker file, and it's going to use that to build the image. Okay, And then let's go ahead and map our ports. So when we go on a separate line like this, we use a hyphen and then a space, and then we'll put in our ports. So I'm going to use 80 on our local machine and map to 3000 in our container, because that's what our app runs on, is 3000. Okay, so that's our app service. Now we want our Mongo service, and you could call this Mongo like I am. You could also call it DB. You'll see that a lot if it's a database. Just make sure that these are on the same level. Okay, all your services should be on the same level. And then in here, let's define a container name, which I'm going to just call Mongo. And we want to define an image, because we're not building from a Dockerfile for this particular service like we did here. We're actually going to pull the image from Docker Hub. So we're just going to define Mongo, and that'll pull it from Docker Hub. Let's see, next we want the ports. So MongoDB runs on 27017, so we're just going to map those, 27017. And then we also want to link our app service to our Mongo service, okay, our app container to our Mongo container. So we're going to define right here, link, and we're going to say dash, and just say Mongo. Is it link or links? Shit, I think it's link. Let me see if I can find that right. Oh, it's links. I'm sorry, not link. So links to our Mongo container. All right. Good. So I think we should be good. Let's save this. And then the last file I'm going to create is a Docker ignore file. It's actually .docker ignore, and it's just like a git ignore. Okay, so we want to ignore node-modules, and also if there's any debug logs, I'm going to just ignore npm-debug-log. Put those in there and close that up. All right, so we should be ready to start our application in containers. Okay, so we should have our main Docker node Mongo container and our Mongo container, and they should be able to work together. And in our index.js, that's why I have Mongo right here. So this should map to the service name or the container name. Okay, so let's try this out. Let's go to our terminal here and let's run docker-compose up. Okay, so it's going to pull Mongo from Docker Hub because we don't have that image currently. I deleted all my images, all my containers. It's going to get node 10, as you can see right here. It's going to get that image now. Okay, so that's the first thing it's going to do, is just get those images. And then it's going to set the working directory. It's going to copy the package.json. Don't worry about that. That's fine. That's just an audit from npm. Copying all the files, exposing port 3000. Let's see. Successfully built. Already exists. Image for service. That's fine. Creating Mongo, creating Docker, node Mongo, so it's creating our containers, and then it's doing a bunch of MongoDB stuff, and then down here it just says MongoDB connected, because in our application, once it connects, I just have it console log out. So it's now running. Now if we go to localhost, we should see our application, because we chose port 80, so there it is, my node app. And if we add an item, we already have some stuff here. Let's just say eggs. We'll add it. Okay, you can see we got a little log from Mongo down here. Choose milk, add, and there we go. If I reload, still going to stay there because it's inside the MongoDB database, which is running in the container. All right, so I'm running this, and it doesn't matter if I have Node or Mongo installed on this Mac that I'm on. I don't have Mongo installed, actually. I do have Node, but I don't have Mongo installed. It's running in the container, and that's the beauty of this. I could port this to anywhere, and we're going to actually bring it to a Digitalocean droplet. Now to tear this down, we could simply, first of all, stop it. We can do a Control-C. It's going to stop both containers. And then, and by the way, if you wanted to run it in the background, you could do docker compose up -d, which would run it detached. But now I'm going to do docker dash compose down, and you can see that it's going to remove both the containers. It also removes the network. That's something we haven't talked about, is Docker networks. Okay, you can actually create your own networks of containers, and when you do a Docker compose and you have those, multiple services, it actually puts them on their own network. So we had a network called Docker node Mongo default, but I just kind of trashed everything, and I can bring it right back up by doing Docker compose up. But I don't want to do it here. I actually want to do it on DigitalOcean. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to close this stuff up. Now, I mean, there's a few ways we could get our stuff onto DigitalOcean. I'm going to use GitHub. So I'm going to push all of this stuff to this repository, and then I'm going to clone this on GitHub. Okay, so I'm sorry, I'm going to clone this on our DigitalOcean server. So let's just go ahead and do a git add. We'll say git add all. I already have a git repository, obviously. And then we're going to do git commit, and let's say added Docker to app. Okay, and then I'm going to do a git push. And if we reload our repository here, now we have all of our Docker stuff. Awesome. All right, so now I want to get this application on a DigitalOcean droplet. So let's go. And then, by the way, this isn't going to work anymore. Obviously, we destroyed the containers with the compose down. But let's go to DigitalOcean. And I'm going to put a link in the description for you guys to get $10 free. And if you've never heard of DigitalOcean, it's an incredible cloud hosting service where you create what are called droplets, and they're just like little VPSs, little virtual servers, and you can do whatever you want, install whatever you want on them. And then you have an option, which I'm going to show you when you create a droplet, to actually have Docker pre-installed. So once you sign up, you put your credit card information in when you sign up, but it doesn't charge you until you create a droplet. So right now I don't have any droplets. I'm going to say get started with a droplet, and I'm going to choose Ubuntu, and then let's see, one-click apps. You'll see that you can actually choose Docker to be pre-installed. It's easy to install. You can just use your package manager or whatever, but I'm just going to choose it as a pre-installation. And then choose a size. I'm going to choose the cheapest one, which is $5 a month. And go down here. I don't care about any of this. And I'm going to add an SSH key just so I don't have to go into my email and get the password and all that stuff. I'm not going to really go through like how to create SSH keys. I have a crash course called SSH Crash Course that you can look up, where we actually do this. We create SSH keys, we add them to DigitalOcean, to GitHub, and so on, so you can check that out. But I'm just going to grab mine by doing a cat command to my home directory .ssh. Actually, I don't even know what I have in there. Let me see. Let's see. So I have an ID RSA do .pub, so that's what I want. So I'm going to do cat, and let's do .ssh/ID RSA _do. I specifically created that key for DigitalOcean, and we want the public. Okay, so I'm just going to grab from this to this, copy that, and go and say new SSH key, paste that in. I'll just say iMac. All right, and should be good. You can change the host name of your droplet if you want. And I'm going to create it. So since I used Docker, it just kind of named it. It put Docker in the name of the droplet. And this just takes a couple seconds. And it doesn't have to be a DigitalOcean server. You could take this app anywhere on any machine as long as it has Docker installed and simply run Docker Compose up, and it'll set it all up in the containers. Well, I feel like this used to take quicker. There we go. Okay, so now we have our IP address here. So now what I want to do is log into this server. So I'm going to copy the IP address, and let's clear this up and let's SSH into that. So I'm going to say root at and then the IP address, and if my key works I should be able to log in, and it's denied. So it got denied. I just need to run ssh-add, and I need to add the private key. So I'm going to do ssh-add /home. Wait, what am I doing? I want to do home/.sh/id_rsa_do, and that should add it. Okay, identity added. Now I'm going to try to SSH in again, and there we go. So now I'm in. So you can see that this is changed to root at docker whatever, the name of my droplet. All right, so in here in my home directory I have nothing, so I'm going to just clone that application from GitHub. So I'm going to go right here, clone. I'm going to make sure I'm using SSH, and let's copy this link here. And don't worry, if you guys don't know what's going on here, don't worry about it. The whole point is to show you that I can take this application and put it anywhere, run the Docker Compose up, and then it's going to set it up for us. All right, so I'm just going to git clone, paste that link in. Okay, say yes. All right, so let's ls. Wait, what happened here? My key is denied. Oh, I need GitHub keys now. All right, so we're gonna have to generate a key for GitHub to work with this server, so I can use SSH. So I'm gonna do SSH dash. God, this is turning into a SSH tutorial. Keygen, and I guess that's fine. No passphrase. All right. So now I want to get my SSH key for my server, so I'm going to say home.ssh, and what was it called? Just ID_RSA. We want the public key, so I'm going to grab that and go to my GitHub and go to settings, go to SSH keys and add a new one. And we'll say DO server, DigitalOcean server, put my password in. I think I recently changed my password. Shit. There we go. All right, Jesus Christ. Okay, so we have the SSH keys. Sorry about that, guys. Now, let's go back to our terminal, and hopefully we can clone this thing. So I'm going to run the clone again, and that should have worked. Good. So now we have the application on our server. So docker node Mongo. If I cd into docker-node-mongo, and ls, you'll see all of our files, including the Docker files. And now we should just be able to run Docker Compose up. So docker-compose up, and it should set everything up for us, just like it did on the Mac, on the local machine. So it's just pulling the images. We have the images on the local machine, but this is a completely different, this is a server. This is the DigitalOcean machine. I should have did the -D to run it in the background, but that's fine. All right, so now it should be running on our DigitalOcean server. So let's grab that IP address. Let's put it in here. There it is. So our Node app is running on our DigitalOcean server in Docker containers. We'll add some eggs here. There we go. Awesome. So I apologize for the little hiccup with the SSH keys, but maybe, hopefully it helps someone out that maybe is confused about that stuff. I just generated a key, copied it, and put it into GitHub. Same thing with DigitalOcean. And again, I do have an SSH crash course. If you just search for that, I think it's the first one that comes up. All right, so that'll run. We can go ahead and stop it, and we can do docker-compose down, and that will get rid of everything. Okay, you can see it removed the containers in the network, and now if I reload, it should just do nothing. Sorry about those dings. Yeah, so you can see that this is no longer working, even though you can still see it, but it's not a working application. All right, so I think that's going to be it, guys, for this video. I do want to do more Docker stuff. I want to show you how to set up other environments like the LAMP stack. We'll do a WordPress one. So I want to make this kind of an ongoing thing. Not like my next video probably won't be a Docker video, but I want to have, you know, maybe one a month or something like that, because I want to get more into DevOps, not just on the channel, but for myself. DevOps is one thing that is a little difficult for me. You know, we all have our areas where it's kind of difficult for us to grasp things, and DevOps is definitely one of those areas for me, as it seems like it is for a lot of developers. But that's it, guys. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you like this. If you do, please leave it a like, and I will see you next time.